Hello, everyone, and welcome to iGaming Accent, brought to you by SBC Russia. And I'm Vakho, your one and only host. And as far as we are moving towards one of the greatest shows in iGaming, as it's called, I thought that it would be great to catch up with Dennis. Most of you who have attended it in previous years, I believe 99% of you would have seen his face, his awesome personality and awesome welcoming culture. And I think that you are acquainted with him. So today, I would be honored to have a podcast with him and to go through everything, what he does and how is everything works from behind the scenes. And also we will discuss what is happening on the global market during the events, because there are big raises and so on and so on. But before that, let's welcome Dennis. Dennis, nice to have you here. How are you?
Thank you very much, Vakho. I'm good, thanks. I'm good. We're keeping busy at the moment, as people could imagine.
Yeah.
Within our biggest event to date coming up in just, 3 weeks, just about?
Yeah.
So there's lots to do. And while you want to get ahead on the prep, you still end up running fast these last few weeks.
I think that all the heat comes down to the last 2 weeks, or maybe even last 1 week, when you are organizing such a big event. And even though you are doing all the best like during the year, it still comes down to the last minute and last week things. But before we jump into what is happening on such a big events, I just always love to hear about the person that is on my guest list. So I just really want to know, how did you get into iGaming and like how things are going right now? So where did you start your journey with iGaming? Because everybody, by the way, has a really funny story or really interesting story. So they somehow stumble upon this industry.
Okay. I mean, mine's less funny or quirky then. I entered the industry with SBC. I started at SBC back in 2016. And that was through a friend and old university buddy of mine, Rasmus Soimark, our CEO. At the time, Raz and I had gone to university together, but we each veered in our own paths. And he was just starting to dabble in wanting to build something of his own next to his full-time job at the time. And eventually that kind of manifested into SBC, and he asked me if I wanted to come over and help build the marketing for this new initiative for a small company, but with big dreams, I guess.
Big ambitions. And I think that you'll now see year over year the fruits that you have, like seeds that you have planted like long years ago, how they are already a fruit. So to clarify, so you had some experience in marketing, right? Before coming to the industry and to SBC?
Well, some, but I'd actually mostly after university. So I've got a master's degree in international marketing from university. So education-wise, I had the experience. Work-wise, I'd actually gone more into sales at the time, but I really wanted to get back into my real passion, which has always been marketing. The prediction and understanding of human and consumer behavior, I've always found fascinating. It's like commercial psychology, if you will, right? So this was a unique opportunity both to come to London on a bit of an adventure and also get back into marketing and help kind of build that up from scratch. And I say build up because,
nothing was there, most probably.
It was just me doing the marketing initially. We were 9 people in total at the company, and marketing was just me. I was the boss of nobody.
Yeah, boss of nobody and master of everything, most probably, because that's how it happens when you start marketing. And that's great, because marketing is still one of my biggest passions over the years, even though I transport my personal journey as well. But still, marketing holds such a big place in the heart and in the mind that everything that I do still comes from the marketing side, because like some other guys talking there that we should do this because it will be marketing better to the customers. Customers will love it. Customers will understand it, and so on and so on. 9 years. That's quite a lot. So I think that biggest thing is that you build it from ground up, and that's awesome. And I think that is a trophy that you, or a hat that you have to wear with the pride. But I think that it would come with the consequences, it would come with the challenges, it would come with the lots of obstacles. Can you somehow colorate how was it in the beginning and what changed during the years as you scaled? Because 9
Yeah.
people starting, only 1 person there, and now I think there are lots of people working, right?
Yeah, there's 133 employees now globally for SBC, and the marketing unit alone includes a couple of other kind of peripheral functions, but is 13 people. So it's a different ball game, of course. I think one of there's been a few different stages of challenges, I
Mm-hmm.
would call them. Initially, it was getting to the stage where you go from executing everything to now start delegating and sharing the kind of the workload and the responsibilities across a smaller team at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, we kind of went to like 3 people in marketing. Then we had a few successes with especially a launch in North America that required additional resources. And that brought in a new structure to try and adapt to that and make sure that we've got the capacity at all times, which is one of my responsibilities. And then now we've moved into something that resembles a lot more like a more corporate structure of the whole company. I think there's been a few different challenges. I think I don't need to mention COVID, of course, for an events
Yeah.
organizer like ourselves, it was an obvious challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we mapped out a good strategy. I'm quite proud of how the company got through that. Lately, the biggest challenge we've got now is we're still kind of transitioning from a much smaller operation where everybody, despite their function or title or whatever, would pitch in on various elements to a much more corporate setup where I think I especially have to learn to let go of a lot more stuff because I need to prioritize more overarching strategic positioning and such. So that's that. I think that's the bigger challenge we've got at the moment as a company in general, not just marketing.
Yeah, because I think that when company goes through that part, the most important thing is that some kind of invisible lines already become visible, right? So functions become functions. And even though the practice that, even though the title cannot like determine who you are and what you do within the company, and you are always welcome to share the ideas and everything, but it structures the workload, right? If you want to request something, go here. If you want to do like new idea, present it, do it in the right way, not like running around in chaos and everybody like goes after it. I personally experienced that from like my previous corporate job, and it was quite a struggle, to be honest, for first 2 years, because everybody was like in still the previous, let's say, mindset that they have to do everything rather than that they
Yeah.
have to do right things and they have to do their own things. And transferring between these two also was quite a struggle for lots of people. And at the end of the day, some people were lost during this transition. But at the end of the day, not production, but the performance of each individual company staff became much better. And that's something that, as I understand, you are going through. By the way, we touched upon small thing, and all the conferences are, most of the conferences, let's say 90% of the conferences are offline, right? So everybody loves to go somewhere, visit something, learn new things, meet new people. And you mentioned COVID. How did you thrive during the COVID? What was the strategy and what did you do in order to stay relevant and not to lose the momentum that you were building for last few years?
Yeah. Well, I think like any event organizer, we came into that not really knowing how long is this going to be the case, right? How long time will this impact? Because if it's just a few months, strategy would have been to just kind of turtle up, restructure the event
Mm-hmm.
map and kind of change the scheduling. But I think at some point at least, we then realized, you know what, this could be a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the strategy that was then selected was that we could do what most event organizers did, by the way, which is turtle up, as I would call it,
Mm-hmm.
lay off or furlough up to 75% of the workforce because there is no revenue coming in, so you
Yeah.
can't pay salaries, right? We elected a different direction than most of our competitors, if not all of them. And that was we kept pretty much everybody on. I think we laid off or furloughed 2 people, including our office manager, because nobody was in
No
the office.
office.
So that really didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then we said, okay, if we keep everybody on, employees then agreed to take a temporary pay cut, scale depending on pay level. And then we tried to keep afloat with digital events, right? So we put together 14 online events in 12 months, which even for online events is an excessive schedule. I don't mind telling you, but it was necessary for us to stay afloat. And at the end of the period is where it then paid off, right? Because that actually meant it became a bit of an opportunity for us. We'd already prepared to launch the SBC Summit as our new flagship event in Barcelona, but that was meant to be launched in 2020. Then we obviously had to cancel that and make it an online version. And then in 2021, we managed to, because we had everybody still on, right? We had the conference producers, we had the events managers, we had the marketing team, we had the sales team. Everybody was still here. We were able to then turn around the first in-person event at the end of COVID, which was the SBC Summit in Barcelona in 2021. It was with a very, very short marketing campaign. It was a couple of months because we only really had a couple of months where we knew that we could even make this happen. But we managed to get, I think, 2,200 people to the event in Barcelona. And it kind of kick-started what the SBC Summit has become into, although that was already the scalability, the plan that we had for this. We wanted an event that brought something unique, where we're focusing a lot more on the overall experience of attending and participating, more so than just putting on an exhibition, right? Because you could do that, and it's certainly a good idea to scale when you do so, but we wanted to also add these extravagant experiences around really, really big closing parties, superstar DJs, outside of the industry knowledge coming in with big headline keynote speakers, and something that we've kind of expanded on since, right? So that event has kind of gone, the growth curve of this event is what you would actually normally learn as a business kind of theory, unhealthy. It's too
quite
big,
crazy.
right? It went from, I think it went from 2,200 to 6,000 to 10,000 to 25,000 attendees. That's been the growth curve over the last few years. And especially when we took it to Lisbon, the whole point of that was that we really wanted to take that next step with the event.
Yeah, to make it more future-proof. I remember the first time when it was announced, I think Rasmus was the one. I even commented there that decision is great because Portugal is known because of the hosting of Web Summit. And if anybody that is listening now has been on the Web Summit, you know that it can host around 80,000 people without anything. Like whole country, whole city transforms into the event. Like when you go outside, when there is a Web Summit, I don't know, even cafes, even some streets, everything is transformed around Web Summit. And you feel that the city is ready for the big time event. Even though I really love Barcelona and that was like my favorite place to go every year, to be honest. But last year, when I was in Portugal, it was like one added new country destination for me because of the event. And it also, one more time, showed me that Portugal is a great place for future growth as well. And I think that you made a wonderful, wonderful decision. By the way, about that decision, I think a lot of things are involved, even though from the front lines, it seems like they changed the city, they changed the venue, right? So lots of thinking, lots of decision making is going to how do you select the cities, how do you select the venues, how do you select I'm not going to talk right now about the speakers and so on. I think that's an interesting topic because last year one of my favorite skateboarders were a keynote speaker, and we had a stand, but we ran over there leaving the stand with our sales and product team and running back just in order to listen. I remember even running so fast that I had a meeting in between. I forgot to have a block time between it. I was running like non-stop there, and it was quite a lot of distance to cover. We were in hall 2, so like around 500 meters most probably, but still running there was quite a challenge with a jacket on. Yeah. So now let's just focus about Portugal and selecting the Portugal as a the big like next destination. What went through you, let's say your operation team and your managing team, and how do you agreed to like internally and then externally to do this and to make this move?
Yeah. I mean, mainly for us, probably a couple of priorities were the primary ones. One of them would be the venue. To host an event of this sort of scale with the setup that we, for instance, require for our events, and that has to do with how we can plan out the layout, what facilities are available, because not only do we want an exhibition, because then we could just go to any exhibition center, if you will, but the size of it and what other rooms and adjacent facilities there are pretty important for us to create the experience we want to. And I think the field in Lisbon is a unique venue. It has this massive stadium, the Mio Arena, next to it, that provides us with opportunities for hosting our award shows, the Infinity Party, as well as like a super stage setup where we can really have these big name keynotes and give them a forum that measures up to that. So I think the venue and then availability of the venue and when that's possible, because one of the key items for us as well was the timing in the calendar. There are a lot of events these days in and around the industry. And I think given that the way people will map out their calendars, most people in the industry will now put, well, ICE at the beginning of the year and then SBC Summit towards the fall. That's really where it needed to sit after summer holidays, essentially, in most countries, right? So that was the goal. And seeing Web Summit in action on site was something that really helped persuade, there's so many opportunities here. And aside from that, Lisbon is relatively accessible.
Yeah.
It is an multiple award-winning destination city, and for good reason. In terms of culinary experiences,
food is wonderful, just wonderful. Like I'm always saying, visit Portugal, eat anything, it will be fun.
Very much so. It's really good. There's a lot of culture there. It's actually a relatively accessible city, Lisbon, in the sense that most other cities that you think about as a big European metropole, Barcelona being one of them, London being another one, Lisbon is a lot smaller. It is by no means the size of these, and that means that it's just a little bit easier to get around. Anybody who lives in London, for instance, will know that in London, count on everything taking about an hour to get anywhere.
Anywhere,
It doesn't really matter where you're going, except if it's down the street. So I think those are some of the primary things. And then weather conditions in September, of course.
Weather.
Although, to be fair, despite any statistic we've ever seen, last year we ended up having a lot of rain. That's something you then have to, as an event organizer, still calculate in, but that's unavoidable.
Yeah. There is always a risk of the rain, so they think I don't know. I don't think that anybody is bothered by that, to be honest. But all in all, such a good climate, such a good city, such a easy to stay and like to find a apartment or hotel. Don't like after. By the way, just to give you one more fun story and to reinforce what you're saying, I went back to Portugal for a holiday just because of that experience, that I knew how well and how good the Portugal was from my work, let's say work related trip. And I think that says a lot, right? So it's much easier to get into, much easier to find a place to stay, and much cheaper to go through anything, because at the end of the day, that matters. You have to get to the event in a reliable way and get out of the event in a reliable way. And everything should be altogether close to each other. Relatively small city gives that vibe, because in London, if you are not staying near the, for example, like last time I was near Elizabeth Line, if I'm saying the line correctly, then you are doomed to have like one and a half hour trip or 2 hour trip to the event. That was one of the big downsizes from me, because you either go by train, and by train you had to like take too many turns and get to that and then walk a little bit. But if you are going with taxi, total nightmare. If you're going with any other transport, total nightmare. So that is one more thing. Like, by the way, we were staying a little bit farther from the event. We were staying between let's say, like easiest to explain, if near the coast of the main street, with the umbrellas and so on. So I don't remember what that street is
You will have
called,
been
but
staying somewhere in the absolute center, like near the
yeah,
very center of London, right?
yeah. And it was total nightmare. But all in all, that's good. And by the way, Neo Arena was such a great experience. I have to say it was like a total like a show and not like something like a random stage there, like with visuals and everything. By the way, let's talk a little bit about speakers and getting, like you mentioned, that not only the ones that are popular and are opinion leaders within our industry, but at the same time bringing the experience from outside. How do you select those speakers? Because I've seen a lot from you and from other as well, but yours of course stand out. Sometimes even the ones that most, like some would ask, why is he speaking here? But at the same time, whoever knows it, he has to speak here because these are very passionate people, very like goal-oriented people, and they are sharing their knowledge with them. So how do you source, let's say, good speakers? And like this year is Gary, right? If I remember it correctly, this year
So
you
it's
have
Gary Vaynerchuk
yeah,
and Randy Zuckerberg are kind of the two of the big headliners from outside of the industry this
yeah,
year.
from outside.
Gary Vaynerchuk, of course, being very much a tech pioneer, invested in Meta, Facebook way before people understood it was a thing. So I think for us it was very important that we have it's a bit of a theme to this year's event, right? And a lot of that surrounds around technology and how
Mhm.
technology is adapted by the industry, invented by the industry, invested in by the industry, and how it generally can and will impact not only our work life today, but probably
In
also
future.
tomorrow. And to get that knowledge, we've kind of tried to infuse the conference with not only these big headline speakers like Randy and Gary Vaynerchuk, but also with actual like tech academies where we take some of the topics that are kind of themed around each of a track, if you will. So AI,
Yeah.
gamification,
Love.
marketing, and then Web 3.0 and blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point there is to create something where not only will you hear from some of these spectacular personalities that will have some both really cool insights and experience, but also just some fun, entertaining anecdotes and stories to tell. That matters because people also want to be entertained. It's an experience at the same time. And then the academies is where people could go in and kind of go nitty gritty, more in detail with maybe less famous but not less knowledgeable experts in their individual fields.
Mm-hmm.
And the big headliners, we kind of go out and we brainstorm ideas to begin with, what would fit with the general theme of the event, what would fit with what we're trying to do. And then you have to probably have a short list of 10 times as many as you need because
Yeah.
availability and such, because there's no other way to do it than just go kind of approach them usually via agencies to see what you can make happen. And then for the more nitty gritty technical experts in their individual areas, usually will work with a number of different strategic partners that might have knowledge and communities and network in areas where we do not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's how you end up kind of populating it with a combination of both.
Okay.
I would say.
And like, I think that the biggest, like, big thing that I got from here is also that you need much more speakers in the arsenal rather than you are going to have, because most of the time it
Oh yeah.
won't work out. So you have to really think about it and plan it ahead. So yeah, good. I would also want to know how, I'm calling it side events. Maybe it's a bit, let's say, thing to call it, but I think that that's maybe a jargon that we have already within attendees. That let's talk a little bit about side events, like parties, like gatherings, like pre-drinks, after drinks, VIP dinners, awards, and so on. So when you are doing such a big thing, and at the same time you have to focus that the experience of all the attendees with different directions should be totally awesome. How do you manage that? And also, how important are side events for the main event? So what correlation those two have with each other?
I mean, side events or networking, I think,
Networking. Mm.
for me, are core of one of the ways that we've set ourselves apart from our competitors over the years. So it is something we put quite a lot more effort into. A lot of event organizers will leave this to their sponsors or exhibitors to start putting together parties and inviting for that. And there will be plenty of that going on in Lisbon as well. We just want to make sure that we're creating at least a platform, because this is an industry that's built on trust and personal connections due to regulatory restrictions, compliance, ethical questions around player protection. It's become very much a thing where you need to be able to trust the partners you work with. And there is no better way to build that trust than, meet
Connect.
and actually interact. So aside from just having the business conversations, which is what the expo and the venue is all set up for, it's sometimes worth it to build a little bit of better rapport and connection with your partners or prospective partners. And I think that's what shared experience is really a good way to build those connections, right? Once you've experienced something that you both remember together, then that becomes something other than just you having a business conversation. And I think that's
Exactly.
why we've always made a big effort putting that into it. The Infinity parties is one of the newer things we've added into this. We will have now added the Legends charity game to that week. Another opportunity that while separately accessed, it fits with the week theme, and it's an
Yeah.
excellent
And
opportunity,
I
just
think that
convenient.
so it would be what I wanted to really talk about as well. I think that is something new for the industry. That's big. By the way, I've seen the lineup. The lineup is great. All my, let's say, whoever is more than 30 years old will remember all those legends, 30, 35 years old. And those were the players we were growing up with, watching and admiring. And to be able to access it on such an easy way and also know the cause behind it, that it's going to the good cause, great. I wanted to ask, how did you stumble upon that idea? And this is the first year that you are doing it, right?
It is. This is the launch of that concept, and more so than stumble on it, this is the passion project from Rasmus being the main driver of this. I've experienced a few of these similar games before, but we wanted to really add an element that both adds another kind of flair to that week, another thing that people will find hopefully useful also from a networking and hospitality
Yeah.
point of view. It's a great opportunity for sponsors and exhibitors and companies that are going to kind of take some of their contacts out for a very enjoyable evening with halftime show and everything that comes with that. Global
So there will be a
superstars from
halftime show? I didn't know that.
there will. Yes, we have
Okay.
not announced the actual artist yet, so I should not on here.
Okay.
But we are about to announce. It's a pretty big Portuguese name
Okay.
that provides that show.
Okay. Nice to know. By the way, I already got a ticket, so I'm coming for the game, and let's see how it works out.
Excellent.
All right. Let's see. I think that was the reason I booked one day earlier, if I remember it correctly. So that was only
Yeah.
the reason that I'm coming one day earlier than the event starts. By the way, I always come at the beginning of the event or at the previous night of the event, but that's moved
Hmm.
my calendar a little bit behind because I really wanted to go there in peace and enjoy the game and enjoy the networking opportunity there would be. Okay, cool. Uh, so let's touch upon the competitors as well, because you mentioned some of them, and also you mentioned that most of the companies, most of the people are, let's say, planning their whole year beforehand, and that is same for us as a startup. We plan it in two directions, right? So first direction is that where we are going just by attending it, and the next one is where we are exhibiting as well. And we've seen for like last 2.5 years, as well, we started our own company, that the number of events, the sheer number of events are growing. And by that I mean, like, every month there is some kind of event that we must go. And as a founder, it kills me. Like, traveling is not my best friend, and it steals like my life force out of me, but at the same time, I know some shows that I should not miss and I should be there personally as a founder. On some of the events, of course, sales team can go and can do their job and be great. What's your take on the competition? What's your take on the sheer number of events? And where are we heading in the future? Because I also personally have seen some merges there as well. So some organizations took some small events, merged it with the big ones, and like made a big moves there as well. So just from the industry expert, the man behind the marketing of SBC, like what's your take on that?
I do think that we've probably hit some level of saturation in the amount of events. I know as a strategy, and people followed our events and our event setup would have also seen that we've specifically tried to consolidate some of our events. That means, as an example, where we used to have a North America event and a LATAM event. We combined those this year into SBC Summit Americas to create fewer events, but then scale those events a bit more instead, so that we can create something that is as valuable for people's time as possible, right? Because no matter what, no matter how many event organizers create, they will only sustain and exist if there is an audience and if there is sponsors and exhibitors for them, right? So that usually means that while there's a lot of events that keep popping up, once you have something that's kind of established, that's probably a good place to then put your money, because that means it stays, right? That means it's consistent. And if it stays and is consistent, that's usually because it's got the audience, it's got the investment it needs to be sustainable as a business, because each event pretty much has to be that. And that's one of the things that we mapped out a strategy for a long time ago, that we wanted to kind of establish our brands more firmly and not have too many of them be tied to individual markets and market developments, because that's another reason why there's so many different events that pop up everywhere and then close down and pop up elsewhere, is they are related to specific business opportunities tied to an individual market. And it's not that we don't do that. I mean, obviously, when the markets are big enough and we think there is a long-term sustainability and interest for it, we will. So we do have our SBC Summit Rio that's obviously closely connected to the Brazilian market and all the opportunities that have emerged on there. But then we also have a portfolio of events that are not really tied to any individual market. SBC Summit in Lisbon is one, SBC Summit Malta is another, SBC Summit Americas is now much broader and kind of instead ties a number of different markets into it. And I think, markets and the opportunities is always what people are kind of chasing. They will have a couple of staple kind of events in their calendar throughout the year where they know, oh, do you know what? That'll be a convenient catch up with all of my clients and prospects. And then I need another catch up later in the calendar. And then I'm kind of prepped. Rest of it will then be related to individual market opportunities that they are either currently exploring or are interested in hearing more about, or they are full throttle just entering a new market. Also, one of the reasons why people will find that another addition to the conference agenda at this year's event is the global and emerging market stages. So the whole point of those is that most operators especially will always be looking for what is the next big market? Where is it we want to take our operation to next? Where are the biggest opportunities? And that follows then all the suppliers and the affiliates, because they will want to provide traffic, they will want to provide their services for those markets, whether it's local knowledge or whatever, or just, plain platform services or something. And that's exactly what we've done here. We've taken a couple of stages where there's a dedicated track to a region every day, delving deep into some of the most interesting markets there. And then each of these regions then have a corresponding, like a conference session and then a networking session following that, where you could connect with the same audience and just listen to all this knowledge and was seeking out the same knowledge as you were. Because most likely, those are all the people you want to talk to when you now explore those opportunities, right?
Yeah, and those are people you want to learn from and not to make the same mistake as they were making when they were entering. And I think that is also part that every year or every few years, new market pops up that everybody wants to get hands-on. And we've seen that in past years, how it changed. Like maybe some legal change or a jurisdiction change, and everybody's like a gold rush. Everybody's running there to mine a gold. So that is also most probably the driver, what you explained, that some of the event organizers are just following those and chasing after those like quick wins, let's call it like that, and not thinking it in a long term, that it should be sustainable, it should be there, and maybe we could cover a local thing and global thing all together in one big summit and one big event, but at the same time have a small, let's say, regional things. And by the way, from the regional ones, I always highlight SBC Tbilisi for last 2 years. I've seen maybe what you just described, unhealthy growth as well. It's like doubled in the numbers, and most probably this year it will be another double one. And that is also something great, because you are like, we have met with most of the clients just because they know that we are, like, our team is based here, like coming to this event just because they wanted to either come to Georgia and visit Georgia, and at the same time meeting them offline was another reason why they came. Okay, you mentioned sponsors, so let's little bit talk about that. So personally, we have, and also, by the way, before we talk about sponsors, so what's your take about exhibition itself? So when the company is ready from your side to exhibit, because I've seen some companies when I was in my previous corporate job that they were exhibiting and they didn't have anything ready or anything to like provide a real value, and they were like, let's say, researching the market or trying their teeth within the market, how it would work. But I've seen also the companies like with big exhibitors and big exhibitions and big things that they do. So from your point of view, when should the company exhibit, and what would you recommend new exhibitors coming into the events that they have to really look into and be prepared about?
Yeah. In terms of being ready, I think most exhibitions will provide scalable opportunities that fit wherever life cycle stage you're at. I mean, we have a startup zone in Lisbon. That's obviously for really green companies. Some of them almost have to like invent a logo just to have branding to have on their booth. That's quite common.
By the way, we
But
have used that opportunity, and that was great.
well,
Like giving a small company opportunity to have like at least small stand where like potential people can come. It's really, really great. And thank you, by
yeah.
the way, for that. It was quite a good thing. Yeah, sorry about
It's
interrupting.
important that there is a space for everybody, right? And if the reason why we do it as a startup zone is both to be able to offer a very affordable investment opportunity in something here that for those that are at a relatively early stage of their company life cycle and are just about trying to get their ideas out, right? It's a unique opportunity for those. It mostly pertains about having somebody that is passionate and able to relay the ideas, because they won't have a ton of marketing material to hand out or cool videos to showcase. It's about explaining the core concept, and then we put them on the show floor so that hopefully we can attract the right audience for them. Whether they're looking to just sell their product or they're looking to gain investment to take those next steps. That's what the first pitch competition is then for, why that sits with the startup zone.
We had to win that. By the way, we all came really close 2 times, and we already teach that part because, by the way, personal story and good story. I think that will be interesting for the audience. Even though we didn't win the first pitch, we got into the same room as investors when we were young as a company, and we connected with them. And from there, we are still here because they helped us to grow in that stage, even though we didn't win. I know a few of the founders that won, and they got almost the same opportunity with the perks, let's say like that, because winning the first pitch comes with the perks as well. So yeah, great thing to do.
For sure. I think, in line with where the event, the industry is always kind of searching for those next technological advances, that also means it's an industry where there's a lot of investment opportunities. There's a lot of interest for investment in new tools and new partners, because we're always acting at the very forefront of technology and advancement, because we have to be adaptable. Right? With the regulatory changes, then a new market emerges, new rules emerge. for an individual regulation, we have to be very adaptable. And the way to be adaptable is partly connected with technology and what options that gives us going forward. So I think that's important. But then in terms of the readiness, as I said, I think that could be at any life cycle stage. You just need to make sure you're making an investment that makes sense for your life cycle stage, essentially. Where are you at? What are you trying to achieve? And then in terms of advice when you're going, I think there'll be a couple of core elements here. One of those is the investment you're putting into buying a space, building a booth, sending over staff. Make sure that you've made a sufficient and equal investment in what you're then doing there, as in how's your staff trained, what instructions have they been given, the staff that you're sending, how will they be able to engage with the audience? Because depending on your purpose, and you should go into an exhibition like this with a clear defined purpose, right? Hopefully something that is both measurable, like quantity, and something that is measurable later in a quality and ROI, right? First part can be simple enough, right? You make sure that you come in and you use the scanning opportunities to scan badges and collect data. If nothing else, that's a measurable yield. More so, and most companies will want actual sales leads that they could then follow up on, and then ultimately revenue generated is the real ROI for most companies, because there will be other elements to the success of their participation, but they could be harder to measure. So for instance, brand awareness in an industry like ours will be really difficult to quantify for most companies. And that means that they find a way to digitalize what you're doing. That's one of the things that the scanners do, of course, and the presence there. And then I think about standing out. And I know that's easier to do with a bigger budget, right? But you can stand out in many different ways. There is a way to also stand out with a gimmick. I think a gimmick is usually a good idea. It can be relatively affordable. Merch has taken a huge dive in quality and investment over the years. In the time I've been in the industry, that's something people used to use a lot of money on, right? When they came, they would have extravagant merchandise at the booths. That's become a little bit different now, but I still think there are some highlights. But even just a robot walking around, or something that will attract people's attention to your booth, right? It's hard to do that in a way that you only get attention from the interesting leads, but you can sort that out later. It's a funnel, right? You want to put as many leads into the top of the funnel, and then you can weave down to the interesting ones from there. So I think that's vital.
What I personally can recommend, like as we went through like being like a small company, now we are still small company. I'm not calling our company big until I know for sure. Let's say like that. But even with the startup booth, even just from attending, let's start there. I remember like 2 or 3 years ago when we first went on SBC, we didn't have anything. We just went there for information, meeting some people, and starting to make some kind of internal network within the industry. We just had one presentation, only like 3% of the product that we intended to market, but it still was clickable. I would say that it could open up in the iPhone, and it could be like one wheel spin would be there. And end of the story, nothing more. But after the year, the startup booth, and after 1 year, our own booth. And this year we're having another booth as well. Even though when we were making our personal booth, even though we could still go with the startup direction, we were seeking the investment in that time, we still decided to double down on the booth, even though I don't really want to share the numbers, but it was around like under 50,000. Let's call it like around 50,000 for whole team, like transfer and anything. And at the end of the day, like it came back to us, I would say 4 to 5 months later, because it's you as a business owner should also consider that deals don't happen on day one. You have to do like a 6 to 9 months back and forth dancing with the potential clients in order to qualify them, in order to nurture them, and in order to be your like lovers after that. But the thing is that even now, when 1 year is past from the last year. Even now, when we are on demos, when we are meeting some new leads, it still comes back. Oh, we saw you're on SBC. Will you be attending next one? Can we meet on next one? Will you be there? And that is the thing that you can quantify that for sure. That is really, really hard to quantify. As personally me coming from the brand, like from marketing, like quantifying the brand awareness was particularly easy. You could do research, blah blah blah, and you could have a virtual things like you could measure it by be quarterly wise and have like what is the sense. But quantifying the exhibition as a brand recognition and how it improves is hard. But when you see that small hint that we saw you, we were at your booth, are you coming next year? Will you be there? Should we book a meeting there? That is a small hint that you get on top of your personal experience and personal, let's say, gut feeling that it works, and it slowly builds up. And I think that is something that people should risk. And personally, my offer would like my recommendation would be when you have a prototype, go for it as a startup. And when you have at least a viable product that can be on production, you can already go with a booth that is a small booth as a thing. And you will see after that, like next year, where you want to be. And that is that. We have a tradition on the podcast where every guest asks a blind question to the next guests. So it was started when we had our first episode. It is still going. I think that it will go till the end. So I'm going to ask you a question from Nika, our previous guest, and you will be also able to ask the question for our next guest. Still, we don't know who it will be because even we have that 10x people in our, let's say, hidden list, and whoever works comes to the next meeting, not podcast. So question from Nika is quite a challenging one, as I'm reading. Why stay in iGaming? What's the cost of being in this sector?
I don't think there is a unique cost just for being in the sector. I think that comes down to any individual company and any individual position you put yourself in within the sector. I think the primary reason to stay within iGaming is that more so than any other industry I've seen, it is a bit of like a community feel. You see a lot of the same people a number of different points throughout the years. I've had the pleasure also of forming actual friendships through this over time. Because again, this thing, you kind of touched a little bit on it, this thing where the industry is built on, will I see you at the next one? Will I see you at this next year? Because that consistency and that trust of being within the doors of the community or trying to knock on the door of the community, those are different, right? You'll find your business conversations being a lot different once people feel like you're part of the community. And that could be as little as just being at the different events. I think the iGaming, the community feel of the iGaming industry, and then I will also say, I think it's an industry that we could be proud of in the sense that it has taken strides ever since 9 years ago when I first came in. And especially since a few years earlier than that. I think the way that we present the industry now is a lot more professional. I think there are a lot of fantastic talent in this industry that have over time, this has gone from what I would perceive, maybe this is just on my own perception, but an industry for a lot of people just to see if they can't make a quick buck, right? That used to be the case. It was an industry where make or break, if you are willing to compromise on your kind of, your principles a little bit, or you're just willing to just kind of put the work in, it could be a way to make a very, very big, quick buck. I think it's gone to a much more established industry with much more elaborate recruitment processes and people are vetted for their competence. And I think the situation we've got, as I mentioned earlier, we need to be at the forefront at all times. This agility that's required also constantly pushes the industry to be very innovative.
Yeah.
One of the most innovative industries you can imagine. I think in comparison, the oil industry is not going to have a ton of innovation. The whole point is actually that they don't want to innovate because then there's no need for oil anymore. So whereas our industry here is very much so. I think that's exciting as somebody who's interested in kind of technology and advancements, and never standing still, I think is pretty important for me. It's important to also work with an industry that does the same.
Yeah. I cannot agree more on the community part of the industry, because as soon as you like, I was always explaining to my peers like 5 years, 7 years ago that there is a hidden door within the industry and you have to find the key. And
That's a good
after you
analogy.
open and yeah, after you open that hidden door, there is no more, there is no more other doors and so on. So you become the part of the industry yourself. And one even asked, how do you feel that you are part of the industry? Well, you feel it when you go to the event and you say before arriving into your destination at least 2 or 3 hellos and how people are and ask them personal questions. You know that you become a part of the industry. And also when you are at the forefront of it, like you always are involved in new things, participate and get involved. So that is the moments you feel that you become a part of the industry. And I think that there are lots of people seeking that. And at the same time, there are lots of people that don't understand that part of the industry, and they think that they should approach this industry as, for example, oil industry or financial industry or any other industry that has much more open doors to everybody that is coming in. So at the end of the day, this industry is built on trust and on networking, because that really matters in the long run. That really matters on such many things. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Oh my God. It's been almost an hour. So I used all the time dedicated to me. And thank you, Dennis, for such an interesting, like, quick view of what is happening in the back end. I wish you like, I couldn't wish the calm next 3 weeks, because I for sure know that it won't be calm and it would be structured. But I think that as you are like 9 years already into this, you already know all the turns and all the things that might go wrong, and you will be there up front. But all in all, thank you for that. And not to forget, what is your question for our next guest?
I think my question would maybe be a little bit more personal in nature. I think it's
Go
always
ahead.
interesting to hear if people remember a specific moment that where they really felt like they were taking a next step, that they were really building something, they were really kind of coming over a specific threshold. It could be anything really. It could be, for me, it's walking up the stairs to the Natural History Museum in London, where we've decided, oh, we want to do our kind
I
of
remember
London
that.
baby party in a much bigger, kind of more spectacular venue. And walking up in the dark outside of those stairs with a very spectacular building with lights on it, I got goosebumps, and I felt, do you know
Yeah.
what? We're taking the next steps in our journey here, and it's cool to feel part of that. I think I'd love to hear that from pretty much anybody.
Okay, great question. And I have to add another respect to that. That was the year that we took our employees for the first time to the event, and when Londo Baby was, and when they arrived, they couldn't believe the sheer, I don't know what to call that thing, but they were like, are we going to the museum, like National Museum? Because they wanted to visit the National Museum, and they visited
Yeah.
after like on the next day with let's say gin tonic in the hand. But like, to comprehend that the party happened there, and like I've been to that museum most probably as many times as I've been on ice, so every year most probably, and like to have that type of feeling from the newcomers to the industry, and like for them to be just amazed that this is happening, I think that needs some kind of recognition and some kind of, let's say, respect from our side. And yeah, uh, great question, Dennis. I'm more than happy that you've been kind enough to share all the knowledge that you shared from the backstage. I will see you in few weeks, and thank you for that. And for whoever and for all the people that were listening, don't forget to subscribe to our channels. You can listen to us on all of your favorite channels, starting from YouTube, ending with Spotify. And this was iGaming Accent, brought to you by SBC Eurasia. Dennis was my guest, and I'm one and only host, Vakho. See you next time. Maybe even we after SBC Lisbon or before. I don't remember, but we will sort that out. So cheers.